2014. Seems like 6 months ago that it turned 2014, but this is the first webinar of the year for us here for the GSA webinar. I am Dave Lowe. I'm the CEO of ISI Federal. We'll get into that a little bit. I am working from home today, and this is what my outside of my office looks like out the window, because we're in the process of getting snowed on, as Pete and I were just talking about. So that's what we look like right now. Jamey, Zell, I don't think, Jamey, are you here with us? Hang on one second. Let me see. Nope, I don't see Jamey there. But Jamey will probably be joining us. He's the Director of Sales and Marketing for GSAproposal.com. And with us we have Pete Chesner. Hey, Pete, say hi.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for your time today, so we can help educate you as best we can.
Yeah, sweet. We'll get to Pete. He's with McQuaid Consulting, and there's a lot of things happening with healthcare reform and how it applies to contracting, GSA contracts, and others, for that matter, in the federal space. The numbers that matter the most today. I know that's not. Is that right? 252 and 617. I think that's right. Those are the numbers that matter most. If you have any questions, the chat. If you open up that panel on your right-hand side, and it'll pop out, and you can chat with us down in the bottom or ask us questions in there, as well as make sure that if you called in on the telephone that you entered your audio pin so we can unmute you. We love to have the dialogue, love to have folks involved. Certainly would love to have your insight on what's happening in your world and how that may apply and help other folks in the federal space as well. A little bit about this series. We did this for GSA schedule holders, so almost everybody here, this is great, everybody here is our GSA schedule holders. Hold on one second, and I'll get us back to where we were. Gotta love that. All of a sudden, it just decides that it wants to do that. One sec. Hang on. Pay no attention to the man behind the screen. Okay, there you go. So really, this is developed for GSA schedule holders to help you identify those obstacles to your success. Maybe you see them and maybe you don't. Maybe you just like to know how to get around those. Gaining some exposure out in the federal market, maybe give you some insider information, some things that may be able to help you be more competitive. Access to resources all the time. We'd love to do that, as well as giving access to the sponsors like us, ISI Federal. We do business development into the federal space. We have a lot of folks that are involved with feet on the street, making sure that we can keep in front of these folks. As you know, there's a branding expedition out there. We start with intelligence and understanding the marketplace. Before we even take a step in the right direction, we need to know what direction that is. And then we provide marketing services as well as assistance and management. We can actually manage your team and make sure that if you don't have somebody who understands the federal space, we can make sure that they're going in the right direction and the right key performance indicators and metrics are being met so that you can actually do business in the federal space. We provide dedicated representation in Northern Virginia, actually throughout Virginia pretty much, but most of everything happens within the footprint here in Maryland, Virginia, D.C., where the federal government's heartbeat is, and we spend a lot of time here, and that includes feet on the street representation. If you don't have someone representing your company in front of the buyers, in front of the project managers and program people, we would love to be able to play a role in that if it's a good fit with what you do. So also we have GSAproposal.com. They do proposal development and management. And what that means, if you're not familiar with GSAproposal.com, go ahead to them and see them. They have a 100% track record in being able to achieve a GSA schedule. And that's why I send all that stuff to them. I do not like the paperwork world of that, so I send that over to Jamey. His information is here. And if he pops in a little bit later, we can do some introductions if you're not familiar with him already. And more recently, we have found somebody that is really instrumental in helping enhance the profits of what happens out there, especially in credit card payments. And we know that this can eat into profits really, really fast. And they do merchant card services with level 3 payment compliance. And what this means, and I don't know if Sean's with us. Let me see. Sean, let me just check to see if Sean is here. He's not. Jamey is, though, and we'll get Jamey back on in just a minute. You can talk with Jamey as well. But they understand the government, and I don't understand how all the things work. All I know is instead of paying 3% or 3.5%, some of the clients that have been, in the commoditized space, especially in the IT commoditized space, we've had that reduced to a point, maybe a point and a half, sometimes in the larger quantities and the larger dollar amounts, less than 1%. And that can be instrumental in helping your profitability. If you're interested in that, you can reach out to Revolution Payment Systems, and we'll give some information to that too. Jamey, you there? I saw you pop in.
You bet, I sure am. I was just a few minutes getting in the door and a little delayed with this cold weather, but things are good. And
yeah, no, it's pretty crazy.
It's nuts. We're getting another wave of the blasting cold. But you know what I mentioned too, aside from the new schedules, and a lot of times companies grow as they go through their time cycle and get into new arenas or have the need for an additional schedule besides the one they have. Also maintaining your schedule, very, very important to make sure it's current, it's correct. We help with those services as well as sometimes clients will make a change to their schedule just for economic price adjustments where they have the opportunity to compensate for some of the growing costs and make adjustments to their pricing within their GSA schedule. We help with those services too and be happy to talk with you about whatever needs you have in the way of GSA. We certainly get the job done, and maintaining the schedule through its time cycle is something that we do as well.
Yeah, and that's important to know, especially now, because we're actually doing several updates right now to GSA schedules because of the time of year. You may have different pricing changes and things like that. So I just really appreciate Jamey and what he does. Again, because for some reason he's sick and loves paperwork. So then we have some of the hot issues that are happening out today. And today, healthcare reform couldn't be a hotter issue, I don't think, from the standpoint of how it's affecting businesses. What are the regulations that you're under and what you're on the hook for and things like that. And with us we have Pete Chesner, who's going to talk about this. We're going to break this out into a more of a compliance type of thing where we're going to do a webinar hopefully in the not-too-distant future. We're setting some things up to really enhance the way that we do these presentations to kind of keep people more engaged as opposed to people falling off their chair and falling asleep and hurting their heads when they bang on the floor. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to Pete. Pete, give us an overview of what McQuaid is and why you do what you do.
Yes, McQuaid Consulting, and thank you very much, Dave. We are an employee benefit consulting firm. And so we handle the employee benefits for our clients, and that is for their health, dental, life, vision, disability, all those things. And we put the contracts in place, but what I feel the most important service that we provide is with the administration of those plans. So it makes life easier for the HR department and the CFO in terms of the administration, communication with the employees, making sure the employees really do see their benefits as a benefit. And that sometimes it's an odd statement, but it's very true that the employees don't even appreciate what their employer is providing for them. And then we tie it back to the CFO and help them sort of work it into their matrix so the cost associated with those benefits fits very well into their model. And do you want me to get into the Affordable Care Act and how it affects the contractors at this point, Dave, or do you want to save that for a later date?
I want to wet their whistle with this because what's happening here is that first of all, there's a lot of confusion, and I am not the kind of guy that understands what the heck is going on, and I don't even try. So what happened was that Pete and I got together for breakfast a couple weeks ago, and he was like, "Here's the situation that's happening," and he had a particular client that is a government contracting client who was doing cost-plus contracts. If you're not familiar with those, we can talk about those some other time. And he was under the assumption that he would be able to make his pricing adjustments based on the new laws and the fact that becomes then a cost. But there were some things that were happening there that really created a lot of challenges for this particular client. And this kind of snowballed into another conversation into what is really happening out there that is affecting our ability to be competitive in our bids and are competitive in our pricing, where if we're not paying attention, we can get ourselves priced right out of a good opportunity. And that's really where we went to. And I'll let you kind of dive into that, give them a real high-level overview of what we're going to be talking about in a few weeks so that you can give us, just kind of give us a teaser for that, if you would.
I will, absolutely, and thank you. So Generally, the thought is that if a contractor can offer benefits in lieu of cash over cash, they're going to save money on their bids because that money that goes towards benefits does not have the payroll taxes on top of it. That's always been the case, but it's always been very difficult for the contractors to make that change because the communication to the employees is very difficult. When you hire them, you give them their hourly rate plus those $2, $3, $3.50 that goes into, those are fringe dollars. And when you communicate to them that, you're paying them $10 an hour and giving them $3.50 on top that are fringe benefits, but you give them that in cash, the moment that employee walks out of that orientation meeting, they think they're making $13.50 an hour. Then if you have to come back some years down the road and pull that money back to save the payroll taxes, those employees really take that as a cut in the pay, and they look at their employer as just trying to make more money for themselves as opposed to paying their employees, which is really not the case. Those contractors are trying to stay competitive on the bids. The more bids that you have, the more employees that you can keep on your payroll, and you can, maintain their job. But it is a very difficult message to communicate when you're making that change. The Affordable Care Act has given every contractor the opportunity to make this change, save money, be more competitive on their bids, because now you have a law and a landmark law, a well-publicized law that forces you to make that change. And as Dave alluded to, I have a client that is a contractor, and they're under a cost-plus type contract, and they said to me several times that their belief is that if there is a penalty that they do not offer affordable care or minimum essential care, that penalty will get built right into the contract, and they do not have to worry about that. And that is not the case. The reality of it is that when you are offering benefits in lieu of cash, that money that goes to those benefits, that $3.50 an hour, that is considered employee-earned money. If you give that money to the employees in cash, therefore having to pay payroll taxes, and even though that's more expensive, that money is deemed employee money. So with all the parameters around the Affordable Care Act and the shared employer responsibility penalty, government contractors that are above 50 employees will be susceptible to that penalty, and that will not be part of the contract because it is built in the discussion of whether they offer cash or benefits in lieu of cash, and that's how you avoid that penalty. So anybody that's out there, larger employer that does not offer benefits to these employees at this point in time, it is crucial that you put a plan in place before January 1. Another point, prior when the law was first passed, this penalty was supposed to take effect in January of 2014, but within that law, there was a buffer, so to speak, that if your renewal is in July, that penalty will not apply to you until your first renewal after January of 2014, which would give you the time to put the plan in place and be prepared, because this law really got passed before anybody had the ability to make that decision and have that insight to their renewal prior to 2014. Well, now the law is passed. Everybody is aware of it. It did get delayed 1 year, but that penalty will take effect on January 1 of 2015, regardless of when your health plan renews. So now is the time for contractors that are making changes to their health plan that they have to make sure that those changes apply to or abide by the laws of the Affordable Care Act now, because if they don't do it now and have to wait till their next renewal, they could have several months of penalties before they have the opportunity to change that benefit. So that's why it's important to talk about.
And that's exactly why we're talking about it. And for those who have zoned out when they said 50 or more employees, I implore you to pay attention, because it's coming down on it. That number is going to come down. And that's all indications that we've seen is that number is going to come down to lower sized employers, and just be paying attention to how this is affecting things. So
Dave,
absolutely appreciate. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, if I can add one thing to that. And in the seminar that we're going to put together, it's not going to just be for employers with more than 50 employees, because another provision in the Affordable Care Act are various taxes that have been passed for fully insured plans. So another part of the seminar that we're going to help educate on, and this is for any group size, is a self-insured health plan. Under a self-insured health plan, it is significantly less expensive to be self-insured in the post-Affordable Care Act world than it is to be fully insured. So this penalty and the employer shared responsibility penalty, that's one aspect of it. But for any group size, any employer size, it's very important to pay attention because self-insurance will probably be the contract you want to evolve into in this post-Affordable Care Act world.
And sometimes that takes a long time to get established and transition to. So that's why I really appreciate Pete because of, first of all, his knowledge he's got and his perspective, which is really, yeah, sure, he's in business of employee benefits, certainly, but he's willing to help share some of this information so that you guys can be positioned and to maintain your competitive edge. And so we really appreciate that, and you're free to add in anything you'd like throughout this. If you need to jump, you can jump. Certainly appreciate you being here, and we'll definitely get the invite out for everybody that would be interested in that. So as to why we're here today, obviously we're here because you guys ask us questions, and we'd like to do our best to be able to help you with that. So here we have Jared, who's from Team Housing Solutions. If you knew how to leverage your GSA schedule, absolutely. Mandy's talking about if it helped increase sales. If we have leads for a teaming partner, great place, right? Teaming arrangements can be very, very lucrative. Can be challenging as well, but they can be lucrative. Sid just wants to get sales. David, if it led to successful opportunities, not just theory, love it. And Chris, if I could get insight into how to identify contact and purchasing officers who don't advertise their opportunities. Absolutely. We're going to be talking about some of that exactly for this reason, because not all these opportunities are actually hitting the street. Have you noticed that? And you'll notice that this has a common theme around it, which is to get more business. And certainly we're talking about driving GSA sales and getting more business. And around that are the numbers that matter most to you. And they are 252 and 617. If you don't know what these numbers are, I'm going to tell you. These numbers all revolve around September. That is September 30th, because at 11:59 Pacific time, you're going to see the last contract that's executed in 2014. And you're saying, Dave, Jiminy Christmas, it's only January, for crying out loud. Why are you telling me this now? And the reason being is because of the spikes that happen in September over and over and over again. And this is almost all industries, by the way. This isn't just stovepiped into one place. There's a few that are anomalies like produce or something like that, because produce is grown in the summertime. Well, then you might have some spikes in the summertime in that particular industry. And you might have some anomalies in yours. But the question is it really happening in September? Because if you're not involved right now in tackling this, you will miss out on what is the biggest marketplace in the world. We're talking about the federal marketplace, and it's $500 billion in any given year, 2.5 million contracts. And I want you to remember that number, because we're going to talk about that. 23% is supposed to be set aside for small business. Oftentimes it is, but there's new things that are happening that are counting for small business, that are stealing business from small businesses with large IDIQs. So there's some shenanigans that happen in the federal space. The Fed buys everything all around the world, right? There's 85,000 buyers, with some of those with warrant capabilities, and some of those are doing super huge. 470 agencies, and they are the #1 customer in the world. And getting back to this, 23% set aside for most of the folks that are here are small businesses, $115 billion. That is a lot of chuck, and that's why we're here, certainly. However, you start to ask yourself, does the government buy what you sell? Yes, they do buy what you sell. They absolutely are buying what you sell. So how come it's so doggone difficult to be able to get some of that money? And the reason being is because the system, this is typical. The system is wired against newcomers. It's wired against, even with having a GSA schedule, because guess what? 20,000 to 22,000 active GSA schedules at any given time. Here are the stats. 7 of those 9,000 have $0 in sales. Now, some of those are new. You can certainly appreciate that. 1,500 to 2,500 don't meet the 25K. And the rest of them, the 10,000 to 12,000, split $35 billion to $40 billion every year. The successful ones are splitting that. And some of those, and on average, it's about $3.5 million. But the problem is 80% of the new schedule holders will lose their contracts. There's a reason why the GSA gives you 2 years to make 25 grand. And God bless me, I hope you're not in it for 25 grand. You're in it so that you can get to the place where you actually have a profitable federal division. But if you use that as an indicator, GSA gives you 2 years to make 25 grand. That should tell you it doesn't happen by accident. And so why does this happen? Just because you have a GSA schedule, and I love Jamey to death, and he helps us get GSA schedules. But it doesn't make money fall from the sky. In fact, you've got to go out and go after it and get it. You have to have a proactive strategy. You have to have a proactive plan with resources to go get that. Otherwise, your GSA schedule is just a piece of paper. It's just a menu that nobody's going to buy off of, ever. And that's what we find out there. So what's in the way of this? I'm going to tell you, a lot of what's in the way starts with you as an entrepreneur, because the entrepreneurial mindset is, hey, we're driven. We're going to go get this. You know, we're good at what we do. We just got to let people, you know, we got to get these things, and we start to apply arbitrary timelines. You don't have the authority to decide how long it's going to take you to get federal traction. That's the first thing. You can't apply a timeline like a year or 6 months or worse, 90 days. You cannot apply that to your industry to see, because you have to look at what happens in the industry, what is happening in the industry, and then determine from what your competitors have done in their success record will be a good indicator of how long it's going to take you to develop your federal traction and federal strategy with your federal strategy. You also cannot apply arbitrary dollars to it, or not budget anything at all. Say, oh, let's get this GSA schedule. As soon as we get that money, you know, we'll start answering, we'll start bidding, and we'll do some of the bids. The problem is that a lot of the bids are already baked, and you don't have a chance because you're not in front of that RFP process. So the same thing applies here. You cannot apply arbitrary time. You cannot apply arbitrary dollars either. So that, making sure that you have that in place. And then a lot of the folks don't know how to measure success before the dollars start to come in. And if that's the case, how do you even know that you're doing the right thing? How can you even tell you're going in the right direction? Especially if the folks at GSA are telling you to do certain things. And the fourth thing is they try to use inexperienced or underperforming resources. I see it all the time. You're not going to go to your ace who's bringing in the money from the commercial sector and all of a sudden stick them in the federal sector. It's going to take them 2 or 3 years before they start being successful. First of all, they're going to freak. And secondly, you're going to lose your income. So they don't go to the steady eddies either. They'll pick somebody who's an underperforming rep and say, hey, take the most complicated world that you can possibly imagine, has their own language, has their own processes, a ton of red tape, and we're going to try you over there. And when they're not successful for 6 months or 9 months, then they say, well, obviously you're just not good at what you do, and we're not going to do it anymore, and it's a total waste. So that's what we see all the time. And then finally, they don't have the intestinal fortitude to persevere. And that means stay in. Stay in for the duration. And every time that I talk with people, any one of my clients knows that we're talking about 2 years in being able to get federal traction. And sometimes, I can tell you, that's not ROI. That's just getting to the place where you know you're not spinning your wheels anymore. You're not banging your head up against the wall. You're actually seeing the progress turn into dollars, and they get to a place where you can start to adapt your processes and procedures, and then get to be able to grow that. And that's part of those things that are in the way. The other things that are in the way for you is the government's wired against you. They don't like newcomers coming to the federal space. They don't want to teach you how to do business with them. It's a complicated process. There are acronyms upon acronyms upon acronyms in this space. And some of those really are very important to know. But Jiminy Christmas, there's billions of them. It's a different kind of market. They have their own language. The system is counterintuitive. And what I mean by this is the information that you're getting from SBA and GSA is counterintuitive to the way people actually make decisions. And they put you into a process where there are no decision makers. If you're talking with the small business liaisons, they don't have the decision-making authority 99 times out of 100. So you're selling stuff to somebody who can't buy, and that doesn't help. The Oz to Boos and the small business disadvantaged folks, they all want to help you. Their desire is to help you, but they can't. They don't have decision-making authority. And most of them don't have sales authority. And they're going to send you over to Fed Biz Ops, right? How many times have you heard this? If you're talking to people, oh, you got to check Fed Biz Ops. Well, let's talk about this for a second. There's 2.5 million contracts executed every year. If you go to FBO and you look at the past 365 days, you're going to come up with about 140 to 150,000 contracts over the past 365 days. Where are the rest of them? And the fact is that only about 4 to 6% of the total opportunities hit FBO. And 75% of them have been significantly influenced by your competition before it lands. So that's why you may have a lot of competitors that respond, maybe not. But that leaves really 1.2% of the total market for your products and services. So you keep shaving and shaving and shaving, and now you have 1.2% of your total for your market that goes down to price. And that's what gets you frustrated, because you're looking at it as a business owner, you're saying, Jiminy Christmas, I'm doing this over and over again, and I can't seem to crack the code. And that's why you can't crack the code, because they're sending you their advice. What they're telling you to do is not indicative to a true sales process, and certainly not indicative to success. And the cold, hard truth is federal business development is hard work, it takes a long time, and it's expensive. There's no way around these things. All the folks that are successful in the federal marketplace know that they've worked hard for a long time and spent a lot of money to do that. And if it were fast, easy, and cheap, everyone would be able to do it. And that's why there is the potential for significant opportunity for you if you understand how the process works and you have the intestinal fortitude to stay in. 80% will fail, and this includes 8As and the rest of those. And most of them are going to go down and say, I just don't want to do it anymore. So most of them are just going to say, okay, I tried, and move on. So the question is it worth it? And we're going to talk about the risks that are associated with this. And I love this quote. Risk comes from not knowing what you're doing. And I can't say this guy's a personal friend of mine. I wish I could. But the guy that had this quote is none other than Warren Buffett. And here you have somebody who understands how to mitigate risk and manage risk. So if we take that process and apply it into the federal government, you start saying to yourself, how do we get there? And what last month we did the first 6 steps to winning in the federal space, and I'm going to be doing again for this month. We did the 12. There's a total 12 that I have coming out in my ebook. The first 6 were get smart about the marketplace. Before you do anything, make sure you know what it looks like. If you're already in it and you're having trouble with your GSA, even more important to know how that market is applying. Can you even win enough to save your GSA schedule? I have folks that are asking me that question right this minute. They say, hey, I'm short, and I got a letter. And you may be able to get an extension for a year, still may not be enough because of the complexities of this marketplace. But if you understand what the marketplace looks like and you understand how your competitors are operating, you may be able to save that GSA schedule. You got to develop a strategy. Involved in that strategy is understanding, after you understand how the market works, how does that apply to you? Then what do? You establish a budget. You get prepared for pressing. Now's a great time to prepare because we're just getting into a place where they passed the budget. So now you're talking about the ability for them to spend money again, which is great, and then getting out, again, dedicating, and I'll say the right resources out there so that you can pound the pavement the right way to get in front of those folks so that you can build the relationships with all the stakeholders that are involved. And we talked about those stakeholders, and those stakeholders are what I call decision clusters. They're the ones that are responsible for purchasing for a particular project. All have different roles and different needs, And more importantly, they have different buying motives. And if you're not hitting their buying motives right, you're missing their buying motives, and you're likely to not be able to sell to them. And there are multiple players in this. If you're not familiar with strategic selling, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Miller Hyman has a book, Strategic Selling, and they have an updated version on Amazon. You can go purchase that. Love that, because everything here is strategic. Everything we do. It's complex. It's a complex sale. Very rare are you going in someplace and somebody says, I just want it, boom, buy it. Now, on micro purchases, you can, but on a lot of these. But they have different reasons for making decisions, and we're going to talk about that. And here we have the project manager, the program manager. These are the folks these are the people that are involved. These are, or one of the three people. They drive the initiatives. They're involved in assembling, looking for new technology, and the things that are hot that are out right now, the things that are being driven to them sometimes from the President of the United States on down. Some of the political components, like your healthcare systems, they are influenceable. Where do you think they get the requirements for their scope of work? It comes from folks like us, getting to them, saying, hey, are you looking at it this way? You may be able to do it this way. And they're involved in the capabilities and the components there. They want to get the job done right. Your job is to tie in with the initiatives and help them look good. Second, we have the technical representative. They're busy. They're out there. They're trying to figure out, they kind of bridge the gap between the program side and the procurement side to be able to spend the money, and they're trying to assemble these technical documents. Again, we're the ones that can help them to identify similar purchases that have been done with your company. To say, hey, we've done this in the past, here's what it looks like, here's how we can help you in assembling those mandatory requirements, and your job, again, help them with the requirements and help them look good. Finally, we have the person that has the money. This is the contracting officer. These are the people that have the dollars and sign on the contract. They're busy. They're not going to teach you their world. They're generally risk averse, so they're not into new things. And they don't even necessarily know what you do or care what you do. They're experts in moving paper, not to diminish what they do. They know how to procure things. So they select the purchasing mechanism. Is it going to go sole source? Is it going to be 8A? Is it going to be restricted? Is it going to be limited competition? Or is it going to go out to full and open RFP? And believe me, they don't want full and open RFP with 50 competitors any more than you do, because that's more work for them. Sometimes they administer the contract post-award, but the biggest thing is they want things to be easy and fast. So your job, make it easy for them and make them feel valued. This is a core human emotion. Core human emotion. And if you think about how sometimes we treat federal employees, that's what it is. That's some of the stereotypes that you have to deal with, and we can talk about that as well. So these are the pieces that are involved. Critical points, getting into some of these, got to make it easy for them. Have your contact information and contract information easy to find in your capabilities. So often we create a problem for ourselves because they can't even figure out how to get in contact with you without working at it. Make it really easy for them to do that. Have a vehicle they like to use. Maybe they like GSA. Maybe they'd rather do a BPA. Okay. Or maybe they prefer a particular IDIQ. Or maybe they go to NASA SOUP instead. But no matter what, you need to be conscious of how they go about and make their decisions and have the vehicle they like to use. And, oh, by the way, how hard would it be for you to fill out a standard form for them to say this is what it looks like if you order this product? And they can do a cut and paste and whammo, you might win right there. So these are some of the things that you can help make it easy. So make it easy for them. Second critical point, appreciate them. Really, really important. These guys can control millions of dollars in your market. So beware of those stereotypes. We kind of went into that. Reframe what you believe about federal employees. And as I mentioned before, if you just think about what you think about DMV workers, because I don't know about you, but if I think of that particular acronym, it just makes my head spin about the productivity or non-productivity of folks. And that infects us. And it creates a subconscious stereotype that we project on these people. Believe it or not, it happens. And we have to guard ourselves against that. So make sure you appreciate what they do. All right. So now we're going to get to the place where we're looking at some of the excerpts from the new book, 12 Steps to Winning Federal Business, and steps 7 to 12. Here's the first part of it, is learning how to win. You'll notice there's a second place tag here. You don't win anything for second place in the federal space. However, you've got to be building yourself up into the second place oftentimes before you can get to first place. And there's some secrets to the success there. First, you want to become relevant to them. Believe me, if they don't know who you are, they can't possibly like you enough to buy from you. And people do still buy from people they like. So become relevant to them. Make sure that you can do that. And one of the ways that we do it is we do executive briefings and procurement briefings. You can't do it with expos anymore. Trade shows are very difficult because they're not doing it anymore. And there's very little access to those. So you have to have a proactive approach. One of the ways we do it is through that. This helps us also to stay relevant and stay in front of them. And being responsive to RFPs, if they're asking you to send in a price, do it. So that way they know that they can count on you at least to get that. And when you lose, ask for a formal debrief. If you're not familiar with that, what that is you just say, hey, why did we lose? Can we get a formal debrief so we can understand what it is that you're looking for better? We want to be able to improve. Who doesn't want to be listened to? And this goes back to that valuing part too. It also applies to that. And it may be your only access to both your contracting officer and the program people. You may never, ever get to be able to see them without submitting a bid and then asking for a formal debrief. So here's some of the ways that we help folks stay relevant, and we recommend this for you. Send out an updated capability statement. I would do this quarterly whether you have an updated capability statement or not, so that you just stay in front of them. But this can include your new contract vehicles, your new certs. If you have something new that you've just accomplished, that's always great. New product offerings, obviously. New contract wins. Hey, we just won this over with the Navy. Even if it's not the Navy. But if it is the Navy, definitely spread the word throughout the same agencies. Personal interest. If you talk to people and you know that, hey, they happen to be Denver Broncos fans, great couple weeks to be able to talk about the Broncos, because Peyton Manning and the crew are coming into New York for the Super Bowl, right? So things of personal interest. Sometimes it may be a referral to another company. That gives you brownie points for you, for the other company, and the person that you're talking to. You may not be able to supply something. But you say, hey, you know what? I remember you talking about this, that, or the other, and it looks like, this is a company that may be able to help you out. And then another way is a referral to a colleague. Maybe it's a referral to another contracting officer or program manager or something like that, so that they can gain access, and also getting them good exposure. And what we mean by that, if you're doing a top-down selling approach, which still works in the federal government, you have the ability to sometimes make them look good in front of their boss. Beautiful thing to do. Beautiful thing to do. So get them good exposure. So leveraging those relationships, step 8. As I mentioned before, people actually do buy from people they like. They can't possibly buy from you if they don't know you. So the biggest thing is get in front of them. Contact them, meet with them, follow up, and continue to ping them. We put people in a ping cycle of 21 to 30 days because people will remember an insignificant event for 21 days. And unfortunately, most of the stuff that you and I do when we're talking to people is insignificant unless there's a reason for them to think about us. And that's the thing, to make sure we're in front of them. Leveraging your existing relationships and connections so that we can expand our footprint. And I love this. We're finding new people, we're stalking them, especially the top guys. CIOs, top-down does work. You get to the CIO say, well, I want you to talk to this guy, this guy, this guy, and you come down 6 or 7 levels in the food chain, and then you're coming on to somebody that has still several $1 million to spend in your industry. And it happens because stalking is good. I like stalking people, and especially the key decision makers. So identifying resources to be able to pursue new leads. And sometimes it comes as a curveball. But if you're looking, sometimes what we look for key leading indicators. And if you take a construction environment, for instance, well, if you're in a trade like electrician or something like that, you're going to see that a contract is awarded to a general contractor. Well, before that, you're going to have architects and engineers that are involved. Before that, You're going to have maybe some land development issues or some permitting issues, that if you're tracking these key leading indicators, they may give you some access to some new leads that aren't publicized all over the place and give you access to the key decision makers. And this gives you the ability to uncover opportunities, especially the ones that are under the radar. And we're going to be talking about that next month specifically. What does an under the radar opportunity look like? We'll talk about that. So this is what we're looking for as we're doing this. Because winnable opportunities come from people, not from monitoring. Sure, you got to monitor, but it's the people behind that that you need to be paying attention to. An opportunity that hits the street today that you don't have any influence on is not a winnable opportunity, most likely. So you got to get in front of that RFP and get those folks interested in you before that. And this gives us where we're headed next, is to get to the place where we're influencing the scope. Some of this is very simple, and some of this could take years to be able to implement. Now here's the rule. Anything you see out there, anything you see opportunity-wise, if you didn't influence the scope, your competitor did. One of them did. Because that's what's happening right now, is that your competitors are in, some of them are under the tent. They could be incumbents in there, and they know stuff that's happening and probably have access to opportunities that will never, ever hit the street. It could be just a contract change, where all of a sudden they assume another 150,000, 250, whatever. They assume additional work just because they're there. So if you didn't influence the scope, somebody did. So let's talk about how we get to the place where we're the ones that are doing that. First of all, get familiar with their procurement processes. Understand who you're selling to. Insert yourself as an expert by supplying them with good information, by doing executive briefings, and maybe becoming a speaker at an event, or including them into something where you're going to be presenting something. Not necessarily selling your wares, but being an expert, setting yourself up as an expert. And this goes to providing good market information. We talked about procurement briefings and executive briefings. This is where we're just talking about the market, helping them understand the marketplace. They're inside the government. They may not even know that there are things happening there. And then provide them good ways to find good companies like yours. And say, hey, if you're looking for this, you know, you'll find them with these certifications, and we have those just so you know, and you can go to this particular agent, you can go for something that you can go to a place where they have certifications, or it could even be an association that you may refer them to. Because when it comes down to it, most RFPs are not just based on price. Most of the time, there's some kind of a technical response they're looking for, because they don't want to just do it on price most of the time. If it's commoditized, difficult. You got to come up with a better plan for a commoditized market, which is why we developed the product to just deal with e-buy. We're looking at ways to be able to pull the e-buy information so that we have a competitive advantage for commoditized purchases, and it's working. So we'll keep you up to speed on that as well. But most RFPs are not based on price. Now, you do have to monitor for opportunities. And the places where you're going, where they send you to Fed Biz Ops, and we talked about this. What hits Fed Biz Ops? Do you know? It's mandated, theoretically, I'll add, that whatever hits FBO has to be 25,000 or above. But not everything above 25,000 hits. But I can tell you this, they're not going to put it on FBO if it's not expected to hit that $25,000 threshold. Because they don't want to let everybody know. There's another way of them operating below that. Sometimes it's a bulletin board in their office where they post it, literally, with a stick pin. Boop. And here you go. How are you supposed to figure that out? Who's going to have access to that? Who would really know? Somebody who's already there. So that's part of that. So what doesn't hit FBO? 95.5% of the stuff doesn't. Micro purchases for less than $3,000 doesn't hit. Most contracts under $25,000 don't hit. Sole source contracts with 8As don't necessarily hit. GSA competed opportunities. You probably know this if you're watching GSA eBuy. That's not posting up on FedBizOpps, and some of that stuff can be pretty big. We just did one for $6.5 million. That's pretty big on GSA e-buy. Never hits FedBizOpps, right? There you go, GSA opportunities. Some of these are the smaller competed opportunities. FedBid, hate FedBid, hate it, because it's a race to the bottom. But you talk about GSA competed opportunities. They have the ability to be able to pick 3 GSA schedule holders and just compete it between those 3. That meets the requirements for the FAR, and they have a reasonable assurance that at least that those 3 people, because they're registered in those SINs, that they're going to respond. And in most instances in that case, it's really dovetailed towards one because somebody else is already in there talking about that opportunity. And this goes to all of those opportunities that are not flying around for you to be able to see. This includes BPA calls, IDIQ task orders. How many times are we seeing new IDIQs come out with small businesses attached to it for 5 years? Think about it. NASA SOUP, $2.5 billion a year that is split between 38 companies. Many of those were small business, and they had a small business category for 5 years. 2 months after they won that, they're no longer small business. They blew right through that 25,000 or 25 million threshold, right? So here we have IDIQ task orders, and then the ones that I really love are the under-the-radar contracts that are there. And when we get closer to year-end, we're talking about compressed timelines, where instead of taking 4 weeks to do something, it may take 4 days. When you get really close, only a day. You have a day turnaround. Bam, if you're not paying attention, you're going to miss in September. So as we're monitoring opportunities, we're looking for your sweet spot. Now, this includes agencies and also who within those agencies are really doing contracts that are good for your sweet spot and identifying what that sweet spot is. Because guess what? Everybody wants the $10 million and above, and you probably can't get that. We're looking for the ones that are under the radar and that have the ability for you to do your bid response and be effective in. So if you have some influence on the RFP, it may not be 100%, but at least you know they're listening to you. So you're still going to have to do that and do your bid response and proposal. But when you do this right, you'll be able to maximize your influence on the front end, which will minimize your investment on having to do a technical proposal on the back end. Spending your money up front to get ahead of that process is far more effective than being a bid machine. I know folks that their hit ratio is 1.5%. So that means that out of 100, they're only, out of 200, right, they're winning 3. 3 out of 200. That is crazy. I don't have time to be a 98.5% loser in this marketplace. I don't have that kind of I don't have that kind of depth in my world. So we got to skew this to a way that we can win. And the next step is to improve your positioning. And again, I mentioned this before, Strategic Selling. If you haven't read it by Miller Hyman, read it. It's a great book to help you understand about strategic sales and what happens in a strategic sale and covering the right people. We do a POET analysis. And what that means is the political, operational, economical, and technical, even on smaller stuff, we'll say, whose ox is going to get gored if we win? Who is politically savvy? Who is the one when you get up into, the $100 million and $1 billion stuff, you're talking about politics I can't swim in. But there's politics even around the water cooler. You know this. So understanding there are political things that can be pulled. And then who operationally? Who on the program side is responsible, and how do we win them over? And the economical and technical folks that are going to be involved in making this decision. And what you can do, even if there's an RFP that's on the street, you can ask qualifying questions to even find out if you have a snowball's chance in winning. Even if you have influence on the scope of work, and believe me, we do our best to have influence on that, but sometimes we get arrogant. And I've lost. I lost a $5.2 million contract because I thought we had it. And I didn't ask the qualifying questions in order to make sure we had it. because we had the program guy covered, and we were so deep and wide in the organization. I was like, there's no way we can lose, but we didn't cover the contracting officer, and we got shot by the contracting officer, and we got beat by somebody who was unqualified to do it. But they won, they awarded it, and we lost. So ask the qualifying questions and ask for those formal debriefs. For God's sakes, you done spent the time to do the bid. Get in front of them. Make sure you do that. And when you do this right, you win. You do these things. You get in there, you start capturing wins, you develop your past performance, you infiltrate the agency from the inside. You become the incumbent that's doing these things so that you can watch for what's coming next. And then be able to grow that influence within those folks so that you can grow your contract. Maybe they pile additional things on, additional work orders on, change orders, stuff like that. You can do that. And then you're protecting your federal turf by looking at it and say, how do we, if you're not familiar with the hedgehog concept with Good to Great by Jim Collins, hedgehog, get in there and then establish your space and do your best to keep the other folks out. Keep pushing those competitors out. And that's what they're doing to you right now. They're doing that. And that's why you have a hard time being able to penetrate. If you're doing this right, building those relationships, and I'm talking to folks every single day, and sometimes like a broken record. But one of these days when I pick up the phone and I talk to them, what do you got on your desk? Got anything that you would want me to take a look at? Well, do you do this? My favorite phrase, do you do? That's my favorite. And that's what we do. So again, reviewing these, get smart about the marketplace. Develop a strategy. Don't just throw stuff up against the wall and think that you're going in the right direction. Plan. Get a plan together. And then establish a budget around that plan because it's not going to be free. I can guarantee you that. Prepare, dedicate the right resources. That's where your money's going to go, is in those resources, to build the relationships with the stakeholders, learn how to win, get yourself moving up that food chain, leverage those relationships, influence the scope, monitor for the winnable opportunities, improve your positioning as you're going back and doing those proposals, and then you will be winning and continue to win so that you can develop that traction. And I say once you're winning, don't stop, because as soon as you win, then you're the real target. Somebody's going to be coming trying to eat your lunch. So once you're in, then you have something to lose. Right now, if you're not in, don't have anything to lose. But once you get in, then you have something to lose and you have something to protect. And don't get complacent, even if it's a 5-year contract. Got several clients right now. They have contracts. One's going to be expiring in a year. And they're sweating bullets because for the first 3-4 years, they haven't been doing anything for business development. Now they're in trouble because they're looking at the end of the contract saying, if we don't win this, we don't even know if this contract's going to come back. If we don't get ourselves out there in the marketplace, we're going to be in trouble. And that's exactly what you have to do. Keep pounding that pavement. So what can you do right now for 2014? First, ask yourself the question again. I know you're GSA schedule holders, but ask yourself, are you in? Do you really want in? And secondly, have you started for 2014? Because if you haven't, you're behind by 4 months. Right now, you're behind by 4 months. So in order to be able to get to where you want to go, you've got to be pounding from here on out. There's ways to catch up, and there's ways to get out there in front of people. They didn't have any money. They couldn't have bought anything in the past 3.5 months anyway. Now the money's starting to flow. That doesn't mean it's going to be deluge. It's not going to be that way. You're going to have to gear up because most of the spending, I'm telling you, is going to happen in August and September. So what can you do right now? Step 1, get smart. And this revolves around the who that matters to you. These are the people that are buying what you sell. If you're not concentrating on the market and you're following some other direction of going into agencies, you're up against something that's incredibly challenging because you don't know who the key decision makers are. The first thing is getting smart, knowing about your market, knowing how your competition works, and knowing who is buying from your competitors. If you know that, then you can develop a plan around that. But before that, how are you going to develop a plan? Because you don't have any idea. So this is what we do. We help you identify the marketplace. Let's take a look at this. This happens to be, I IT security. You think there's some money in IT security? $9.4 billion. Now, this happened to be back in 2010, 2011, but I can tell you they're still spending billions on security. It's one of the things that are out there. So here we look at security and we say, who's winning? Well, who knows about CSC? Just about everybody, right? And here we see there are $248 million in IT security alone that Computer Sciences Corporation is winning. And you see folks like MITRE and SAIC, Lockheed, HP, Deloitte. Everybody knows these folks. And guess what? You can't have that market. You're not in a position to be able to compete with somebody who's got billions of dollars to spend. Billions. They spend hundreds of millions of dollars on BD within singular agencies alone. You don't have the wherewithal to compete against them. Stacked with billion-dollar corporations, they are formidable, deep and wide relationships within these agencies. So the question is, where is your sweet spot? And that's the real question. Here's the same information that we were just looking at. Here we're starting to look at, instead of looking at the total wins, which is super big, super high dollar stuff, we find somebody like BPSI. Chances are you don't even know who they are. But take a look at it. 523 contracts for $34.8 million. Almost $35 million in IT security alone. Very interesting, because the largest contract is less than $750,000, which is a great threshold for you to be looking at for contracts that are under the radar, for multiple reasons. The big boys don't even want those. And that's why somebody like a BPSI can come into it. But I still think you might be barking up the wrong tree. But we are getting closer. So let's take a look at some of the other folks, still in the top 20 of the contracts that are executed. And we find somebody, KT Consulting, for $5.9 million. And look at this, 150 contracts for $2.3 million. Now, if we take a look at their contract size, the average size of these are 33,000. The largest, 166 and 274, 275 almost. How much you want to bet for, just real quick, on this particular contract, that JDG Associates on that contract set the budget of $275,000. I'll bet you they were there and set that budget at $275,000, and they came in at $274,950. I'll bet you they did. And that is how you get to the place where you're winning. And we like to see these kinds of averages, because these averages are well under the radar of any of the big boys. A lot of the medium players don't even want to play in this space, but it gives us the ability to be able to book $6 million for crying out loud. You haven't heard of these folks, have you? Have you heard of either one of those? But they booked 324 federal contracts for $8.2 million. They put $8.2 million of the federal contracting in the bank. Their bank. Not your bank, their bank. So again, this is where we're looking at folks that have understood the process and got under the tent. And these are your tax dollars at work. In case that doesn't drive you nuts, that your competitors are putting your money in their bank account, I think you need to do something else if that doesn't affect you. So there's also agencies that hit your sweet spot. Now, we know a lot about Medicare and Medicaid, right? A lot of money spent there, especially over the last few years. But what about the rest of these folks? Food and Nutrition Services, Maritime Administration, Millennium Challenge Corporation, Office of Thrift Supervision. Most folks don't even know about them. And that's why they're under the radar. They're a lot easier to penetrate. So 24 agencies over $100 million, 70 agencies over $10 million. This is in security, so maybe a little bit different in your world, but 118 agencies over $1 million in security spending alone. That rivals any of the Fortune 500 companies, right? So here we go. Let's talk about the competitors, your specific competition. And if this doesn't blow your mind, because this is where I live, this is where I love to go, and the fact of the matter is there are limited competition in almost all of these contracts. This is the same data that we were looking at before. $7.75 billion. 82% of the contracts were competed with 5 or less competitors. That's not FedBizOps land. And if you look at the total number of contracts, over 80%, dollars and number of contracts, less than 5 competitors. And if you take a look, almost 60% of those didn't have any competitors at all. And that's the magic of the game. So the question is, where are these contracts? They don't hit FBO. They don't hit eBuy. They're not bought on GSA Advantage with point and click. They're not publicly made available, and they're not opportunity driven. They don't hit on a radar screen and say, here's our forecast, because everybody knows about those. Where are the ones that are not opportunity driven? They are relationship driven. Your job, because people buy from people they like, your job is to get them to like you. And they can't possibly like you unless they know who you are, and you can't know who they are. They can't like you or know you if you don't know who they are. So this is the who that matters to you. Let's take a look at this. These are the people that are buying specifically $4.5 million, $1.7 million. These are people that you're going to want to know, buying from your competition. And these are your competitors' best customers. So we dig down into the specific people that are responsible for the purchases. And if you see somebody that did 8 contracts for $387,000 with your competitor, the chances are if it comes out with that person's name on it, you can make a decision if you even want to bid at all. But at the very least, you can go after them because we have the agencies and we have their phone numbers and we have their email addresses. And we go after them. We can develop a proactive strategy in these under-the-radar places because we have their information and we can go after them and have a strategy to go after them. So these are the who that matter to you. Now, you make a decision. If you know the people that are buying what you sell, you have 2 choices. You can either let them keep putting your tax dollars in your competitor's bank account, or you can choose to go get them. And for my world, this is what I love to do. Any questions about those folks? There's a lot of information. Usually there's people that are asking questions about, and I have one here. How do you find that information? That's great. That's what we do. We actually, when I got into this 6 years ago, getting into this, trying to figure out, my clients pulled me into this before I even started ISI Federal. They pulled me into this, they want you to do this. I'm like, I don't even like the federal government. I don't even know how it operates. So the first thing I did was start to understand who the key decision makers were. And I got lucky because I had some senior people at GSA that were willing to help me to understand the lay of the land. And so what we did is we took another step. And then I went back to those folks. I went back to them and said, here's what I see. Here I see these people. Should I do more research on these people? Yes, they're the right people. And I went back to the senior people and I said, here's what I see as the problem. And they said, you got it. And that's what we've done with ISI Federal is find a way to be able to find those people. We do it. We find them. And we supply that for our clients. So any other questions? Let's see. We have, will you be making this available? Yes, we'll make this available. The presentation will be made available both on YouTube as well as with the sales. With the presentation points. Make sense? All right, so if there's no other questions with that, we'll get on with that, with what we can do today. We provide a GSA special here where you can find the contacts who buy your stuff. More importantly, know your competitors' contacts. Under the radar contracts, we're going to identify those. If you do 8A stuff, we have a program for that as well. Breaking down of agency spending, primes and their contacts, the recommended action steps specifically for your company based on the information that we find. This is 90% of your strategy so that you can get moving. And normally this is $4,500 and we have a $505 sale on this. So for $39.95, just mention this webinar and we'll do that. Just to tell you a little bit about the folks who have done it and are seeing the results. William Scotsman, #1 in their space. They do these types of buildings where they do temporary buildings and trailers for offices and things like that. They also have some storage components. We did this for them, changed their world. Also, Link Services. They're now number 228 on the Inc. 500, and also 5,000, obviously. But we have a great congratulations to them for building what they do. And here's what they say. This is the best intelligence we've seen, 100% clarity into our market. We find things that other folks simply cannot find on their own. The information is convoluted. There's plenty of databases that you can go get and buy. There's plenty of things that you can see out there. You can go to Deltec and spend $10,000 or $12,000 on opportunities that are coming out. Again, they don't revolve around opportunities. Your wins don't. They revolve around the people that bring those opportunities out and becoming winnable opportunities by knowing who they are. So again, key contacts who buy your stuff, your competitors' contacts, under-the-radar contracts, breakdown of agency spending, primes and their contacts, and recommended action steps. These are the pieces that you need today. If you haven't done it already, this is what you need in order to establish yourself to get ready to penetrate that space and grow in the space. And some of the other folks talking about what we do, exactly what we needed, Steady Networks. And guess what? Steady Networks decided that they didn't want to do it just yet. They didn't have the resources. It's okay. It's okay to decide. But there's $390 billion in the next 252 days and $890 billion in the next 617 days going to be spent in the federal space. And you need to make a decision to get in, get moving, so you can start winning. We also do business development. You can read about that if you like to. And we appreciate Jamey being here with the GSA schedule development. If you need a makeover, reach out to Jamey. He'll help you be able to do that. Jamey, you have any other messages that you have for anybody else for what to look out for in 2014?
Yeah, certainly. Any questions at all about GSA, certainly feel free to give me a call. Also, if you want to look at your specific marketplace and find out what has been being spent with regards to GSA's purchases in your particular arena, please let me know. Give me a call. Certainly be happy to go over that with you so you can understand what business you might currently be missing so you can take proper action and start winning the business that you've been missing.
And that's the God's honest truth. So we appreciate you being here. We're going to dive into some more details for GSA later. So here's the thing. I'm going to wind it up with this. If you're not willing to invest in the appropriate time and resources, I'm going to straight up with everybody. Stop. Stop right now. Just don't even do it anymore and focus on your commercial business. Focus on stuff maybe sub-to-prime business. Stop doing it, because it is just not worth it. I don't want to see you fail. And if you're going to fail, I'd rather see you fail fast and not spend, $100,000 in failing. So if you're not willing to invest the appropriate time and resources, and again, you don't have the right to decide how much it's going to take or how long it's going to take. The federal government, the federal process is going to determine that for you. You just have to have the intestinal fortitude to stay. The average successful federal contractors that sell more than $2.5 million spend about $150,000 per year in the first 2 years, and that's with little or no progress in dollars. So we have this is available for you. You can do your own budget resource allocation worksheet, figure out where you fit in, and we can help. We can help you. We can save some money on that $150,000 a year, certainly, but that number's real. That number's real. We can help you with the right resources and riding the right horse. If you're willing to invest the appropriate time and resources, let's go. There's a lot of money here. There's a lot of money. And there are a lot of people that are not going to get that money, and they're going to fail. So we're going to let them fail, but we're not going to let you fail. You can grow your business. Lots and lots of chuck in this federal place, including $115 billion for small business. The majority of that, by the way, is still there. There's probably $100 billion of that still available, even though we're 4 months into 2014 for the fiscal year. We're a third of the way through, but we haven't gone a third of the way through that money, because a lot of that gets spent at the end of the year. There's 252 days left until September 30th, 2014, and 617 days left through September 2015. These are the 2 dates that I want you to keep in mind, because they will help you frame your entrepreneurial mindset away from any numbers that matter, otherwise than the real ones. The real numbers, these are the real numbers. 617 days is what you should be looking at for measuring your successful federal strategy, not 6 months. 6 months, I can tell you, you blew it. You can't do it. It's probably not going to work. Now, enhance that to 9 months so that you're into September, you have a much better chance. enhance it to 18 months, actually 20, more than that, 20 months. And I can almost assure you, if you do the right things, you're going to be successful in 617 days. But it's not going to be easy, it's not going to be fast, and it's not going to be cheap. If everybody could do it, then everybody would be doing it. So, again, reach out to Jamey for that, for your GSAproposal.com. Great place to go if you need a makeover or want a new GSA schedule, because you may find that they want a different vehicle. You may have a Schedule 70 but need to get the Mobis or something else. You may need something new. So reach out to Jamey. We certainly appreciate that. Reach out to Revolution Payment Systems. If you need some contact information, we can help you with that. They understand the government in dealing with your P-card purchases. And don't be losing money on your credit card purchases. And certainly give a little less away on your profit. If you're only making 8 points and you're giving 3 of them away to the credit card company, man, that hurts. And sometimes you're making less than that. Next webinar, February 18th, 2014, 11 a.m. We're going to be talking about GSA by the numbers. GSA skipped the numbers that they released. And Jamey, you were talking about this earlier. They skipped the numbers, and now we know the numbers for 2013, and we're going to be talking about that. I'm going to send out an update to the folks with GSA market cap, and we're going to be working through those numbers next month so that we can start to identify who's winning those under-the-radar contracts. And if you look at the folks that are winning in the GSA world, the chances are they're not just winning GSA money, they're winning overall federal money, and we're going to be talking about that as well. So certainly we're looking for you to have this face of pure accomplishment in 2014. We appreciate you being with us. Happy New Year again, and cheers to a new year and another chance for us to get things right. I love it. Oprah is an incredible lady. She grew up, actually didn't grow up, but she worked here in one of her first jobs. I got to meet her a couple of times. Incredible lady. Certainly very, very wise, very successful. So we appreciate you guys being with us. Thanks for joining us. If you need to reach out to me, here's my contact information, and don't read anything about that next session. Whoever put this together missed it completely. The next session is obviously in February. Reach out to Jamey for GSA stuff, and Sean if you need information dealing with your credit card processing. Thanks again for joining us. Appreciate it. Thanks again for you, Pete, for joining us. If you have anything else, we're going to make sure we get that out as well for Pete's information if you need some information with that. But certainly we're going to be scheduling that webinar where we're going to be addressing those issues. Thanks again. Appreciate everybody.